So now I'm asking the Right Honourable Lady, on behalf of the British people and local authorities, what it means for them. Is she going to follow the same playbook, pretend she didn't know what it costs to build affordable housing, or to change the planning system and impose more costs for builders, home buyers and renters? These are just a few of the questions that the government will need to answer, and I'm sure colleagues across this House will have many more questions for them. But the government is in danger of choosing the worst of all worlds, not addressing basic economics of house building, centralising decision-making, and when you look at all that, it looks like the 1.5 million homes will be a distant aspiration rather than a meaningful target. Thank you.
Yeah.
Stop everything what you are doing. Britain has just been shaken by a revelation so explosive that even Keir Starmer himself has been left scrambling for answers. Angela Rayner, his deputy, the woman he once called his most trusted ally, is now at the centre of a £150,000 property scandal that refuses to die down. And now her own lawyers have exposed court secrets that are tearing Labour apart from the inside. This is not just a minor slip-up or an unfortunate misunderstanding. This is the kind of scandal that destroys political careers, wrecks party credibility and leaves voters questioning whether anyone in Westminster can ever be trusted again. If you thought the first wave of revelation was shocking, wait until you hear what has just been uncovered. Because what was once dismissed as an administrative error now looks like a carefully crafted cover-up, and the consequences for both Rayner and Starmer are catastrophic. Let us begin with the timeline, because every single date, every single document, every single transaction tells a story. And it is a story that reeks of manipulation and deceit. January 2024, Angela Rayner sells 25% of her Ashton-Underline family home to her disabled son's trust for £162,500. On the surface, it looks noble, almost compassionate. A mother securing her son's financial future. But scratch beneath that polished surface and the cracks begin to show. That precise £162,500 just happens to be the exact amount Rayner needed for a deposit on an £800,000 luxury flat in Hove. Not £160,000, not £170,000, but the precise number required, as if the property market itself was bending to her will. Coincidence or calculation? The answer becomes clearer the deeper you look. February 2024, Rayner closes on her Hove flat, proudly stepping into coastal luxury while most Britons cannot even scrape together a deposit for their first home. She takes out a £650,000 mortgage for the balance. But the down payment, the lifeblood of the deal, comes straight from the trust that was supposedly meant to safeguard her son's future. This is not a case of a parent acting in generosity. This is a politician treating a trust fund like her own personal bank account. And if that was not bad enough, the paperwork surrounding the sale of the Ashton property raises even more questions. The house did not simply rise in value, it jumped overnight from £487,500 to £650,000. That is a staggering £162,500 increase. Again, the exact figure she then used. You can call that an error if you want, but to ordinary families struggling with rent and mortgages, it looks less like a clerical mistake and more like deliberate financial engineering. March 2024, the so-called valuation error is magically discovered. Rayner's legal team insists it was nothing but an administrative slip, something that happens in the labyrinth of property paperwork. But here's the problem. These slips always seem to land squarely in the politician's favour, never the other way around. Do we ever see a Deputy Prime Minister losing £150,000 because of a clerical mistake? Of course not. Instead, the timing is suspiciously convenient. Just after she had secured her luxury flat, just after the trust funds had changed hands, just after every piece of the puzzle had already fallen into place. This is not the behaviour of someone making innocent errors. This is the behaviour of someone playing a high-stakes financial game while pretending to be the champion of working people. But now comes the real bombshell. the court secrets that her own lawyers tried to keep hidden. In private legal exchanges exposed in documents now circulating among journalists and political insiders, it has been revealed that Rayner's team not only knew about the valuation discrepancies months in advance, but actively discussed how to frame them if they ever came to light. This is no longer a question of whether she was aware. The question is how much she was willing to manipulate the narrative to protect herself. Lawyers can argue administrative error all day long, but once private communications reveal discussions of framing and narrative management, the mask slips and the scandal transforms from negligence into a calculated cover-up. For Keir Starmer, this is a political earthquake. He built his leadership on the promise of restoring trust, of dragging Labour out of the swamp of scandal and factional chaos, of presenting himself as the safe pair of hands Britain desperately needed after years of Conservative turmoil. And yet here he is, facing the reality that his deputy, his chosen partner in leadership, has detonated a scandal so toxic it threatens to poison the entire Labour brand. Imagine the scene. Starmer sitting in his office, documents spread across the desk, each one a dagger aimed at the heart of his credibility. His phone will not stop ringing. Journalists, MPS, donors, all demanding answers he cannot give. How does a man who promised integrity explain away a deputy accused of siphoning trust money for personal property deals? The Conservative Party has seized on this with ruthless efficiency. Richard Holden and other attack dogs are circling like sharks who smell blood in the water. Their messaging is devastatingly simple. If Keir Starmer cannot control Angela Rayner, how can he control a country? If Labour cannot manage its own finances, how can it manage Britain's economy? Every Prime Minister's questions will now be an ambush. Every interview a minefield. Every policy announcement overshadowed by the ghost of Rayner's scandal. It is political warfare, and Starmer is already bleeding. Meanwhile, ordinary Britons are watching this unfold with a mixture of rage and disbelief. Families cannot afford rent. Young people are trapped in the rental market. Mortgage rates are suffocating middle-class households. And energy bills eat away at what little disposable income remains. Against that backdrop, the image of Angela Rayner using a disabled child's trust as a stepping stone to buy a seaside retreat is nothing short of obscene. It is not just hypocrisy, it is betrayal. She stood on platforms railing against property speculation, painting herself as the authentic voice of working class struggle, while secretly operating as a property speculator herself. The gap between her public rhetoric and private reality is wide enough to swallow Labour's credibility whole. And do not think for a second that this story is over. HMRC is already circling, opening investigations into every detail of Rayner's dealings. And when the tax authorities come knocking, you cannot hide behind administrative errors and clever legal phrasing. They have access to every bank transfer, every communication, every hidden clause. They do not let go once they have your scent. And so what began as a single scandal is now metastasizing into a crisis that could drag on for months, even years, crippling Labour in the process. This is just the beginning of the story. The revelations so far have torn open the facade of trust, exposing a deputy prime minister entangled in a financial web of her own making. But the deeper question now looms. How far did Keir Starmer know? And how much longer can he defend her before his own leadership crumbles under the weight of this scandal? The fallout from Angela Rayner's scandal has now reached a boiling point, and the storm clouds hanging over Keir Starmer are darker than ever. What began as whispers of a suspicious property deal has erupted into a full-blown political inferno, fuelled by court revelations, damning paperwork, and the very public collapse of Labour's carefully crafted image of integrity. Britain is watching in disbelief as the party that promised to clean up politics is now drowning in a mess of its own making. And at the very centre of it all stands Rayner, whose every move is being scrutinised, dissected and condemned. But make no mistake, this is no longer just her crisis. This is Starmer's nightmare, and it is tearing Labour apart from the inside. Inside Westminster, the atmosphere is electric with tension. Labour MPs are cornered in corridors, grilled by journalists desperate for quotes, forced to choose between defending their former deputy or throwing her under the bus. Some are calling for patience, urging that the legal process be allowed to play out, while others are blunt. Rayner has humiliated the party and must be cast aside permanently. Yet Starmer himself remains paralysed. His instinct is to delay, to wait, to calculate the least damaging path forward. But in politics, hesitation is fatal. Every hour he refuses to act is another hour Conservatives use to brand him weak, complicit or blind. The perception is devastating. If he cannot even lead his own deputy, how can he lead a nation battered by crisis? Rayner's legal team has now become her lifeline, fighting on two fronts, one in the court of law, the other in the court of public opinion. Their official stance is firm. The valuation error was an innocent administrative mistake, exaggerated by political enemies, but behind closed doors, the cracks are impossible to ignore. Documents leaked from private legal discussions show strategizing, not innocence. Phrases like narrative control and damage limitation appear in the very files that should have exonerated her. Instead of looking like a victim of bureaucracy, she now appears as the architect of a careful cover-up. The irony is brutal. In trying to protect herself, she has handed her enemies more ammunition than they could have ever dreamed of. Meanwhile, the Conservatives smell blood in the water. Prime Minister's questions have turned into a theatre of humiliation, with Tory MPs baying for Rayner's head, and by extension, Starmer's credibility. Richard Holden and other senior Conservatives repeat the same brutal line. If Labour's own deputy cannot be trusted with a house, how can Labour be trusted with the economy? It is a devastatingly simple attack, and it lands with surgical precision. The Tories no longer even need to defend their own record of chaos and mismanagement. Labour is doing the job for them. Every headline, every broadcast, every viral clip now centres not on Conservative failures but on Labour's hypocrisy. For Starmer, the timing could not be worse. Outside the bubble of Westminster, ordinary Britons are seething. Social media has erupted with fury. Memes mocking Rayner's administrative error spread like wildfire, and commentators across the spectrum are demanding answers. The anger is not abstract, it is personal. Families who have been denied mortgages, who are crushed under sky-high rent, who cannot dream of buying property, are watching a Deputy Prime Minister manipulate trusts, valuations and mortgages like pieces on a chessboard. To them, it is proof that politicians live in an entirely different world, one where rules bend and errors conveniently turn into six-figure windfalls. Rayner's scandal has become a symbol of everything that is rotten in politics: hypocrisy, double standards and self-enrichment disguised as public service. And the damage does not stop at optics. It is now infecting Labour's internal machinery. Donors are quietly questioning whether they should keep funding a party whose leadership cannot even police itself. Polling numbers, once steadily rising, are starting to wobble as swing voters recoil from the stench of corruption. Behind the scenes, Labour strategists are in panic mode, running scenario after scenario, trying to calculate whether cutting Rayner loose will save the party or destroy it further. The calculation is brutal: sacrifice her to save the party or defend her and risk sinking the entire ship. For Starmer, it is the cruelest of choices, and here lies the heart of the matter. Leadership is not about policies written in quiet offices. It is about choices made in moments of crisis. This is Starmer's test, and so far he is failing. His silence reads as complicity. His hesitation reads as weakness. His loyalty to Rayner reads as blindness. For years, he has cultivated an image of a cautious lawyer, measured and deliberate. But politics is not a courtroom, it is a battlefield. And right now his deputy has handed his enemies the sharpest weapon imaginable. The Rayner scandal is not just about one person's greed or one property deal gone wrong. It is about the fragile trust between politicians and the people they serve. That trust is already at breaking point, worn thin by years of broken promises and endless scandals. And now, in this moment, Labour was supposed to be different, cleaner, more honest, more in touch with ordinary people. Instead, they have delivered the same old circus dressed in slightly different colours. For voters, it is a cruel betrayal, and betrayals are not easily forgiven. But the story does not end here. As HMRC digs deeper into Rayner's financial dealings, as new documents surface in courtrooms and leaks drip into the press, the scandal threatens to grow into something far larger than anyone imagined. If the early revelations were shocking, what happens when the full truth comes out? What if the £162,500 was only the beginning? What if more properties, more trusts, more errors are revealed? The whispers in Westminster are already growing louder. If Angela Rayner falls, she might not fall alone, and the shockwaves could reach all the way to Starmer himself. The scandal now stands at the point of no return. And what lies ahead for both Angela Rayner and Keir Starmer is nothing short of political devastation. Britain has seen scandals before: sleaze, expenses, lies, betrayals. But this one feels different. It is not simply about money, not simply about property, but about the raw hypocrisy of a party that promised integrity while secretly indulging in the very behaviour it condemned. Labour's credibility is dangling by a thread. And each passing day of silence, each failed defence, frays it further until it risks snapping altogether. Angela Rayner has resigned from her government positions, a move calculated to protect the party but transparent in its intention to savour herself. To the public, it looks like the classic manoeuvre of a politician in free fall: step aside, avoid the daily scrutiny, but keep the perks of Parliament. She still pockets her MP salary, still enjoys her platform, still clings to power in a diminished form. This is not accountability, this is survival. And the public knows it. In pubs, in workplaces, on social media, the mood is bitter. If it was us, we'd go to prison. If it's them, they keep their jobs. The double standard has never been more obvious. For Starmer, the crisis is eating away at the very foundations of his leadership. He has tried to present himself as a steady hand, a man above the noise of scandal, someone who could rebuild trust in politics, but now he looks like every other leader caught shielding a scandal-ridden ally, refusing to act until the pressure becomes unbearable. He faces a brutal dilemma. If he distances himself from Rayner completely, he risks enraging Labour loyalists who see her as the party's authentic working-class voice. If he continues to defend her, he ties his fate to hers, and if she thinks he sinks too, it is the political equivalent of holding a live grenade, Rogud, unsure whether throwing it or clutching it will do more damage. The Conservative Party has never been more gleeful. For once, they do not need to deflect or defend. They simply sit back and amplify Labour's humiliation. At Prime Minister's questions, Tory MPs laugh openly, mocking Starmer's silence, chanting Rayner's name like a taunt. Clips go viral, not because of Conservative brilliance, but because of Labour's collapse. Every news cycle dominated by Rayner is a gift to the Conservatives, who are quietly erasing their own failures from the headlines. For a party that was once drowning in scandal themselves, this is nothing short of political resurrection, and Starmer handed it to them on a silver platter. The deeper tragedy, though, is not about party games in Westminster. It is about the millions of ordinary Britons who place their fragile trust in Labour, who believe the promises of change, who thought perhaps, just perhaps, this time might be different. For them, this scandal is salt in an open wound. Families evicted because they cannot keep up with rent. Young people giving up hope of ever owning a home. Pensioners freezing in houses they cannot afford to heat. All of them watch as their supposed champions play Monopoly with trusts and valuations. The anger is not abstract. It is visceral. It is personal. And once that trust is broken, it is near impossible to win back. But perhaps the most dangerous part of this entire crisis is the unknown. HMRC's investigation is not bound by politics. It is bound by numbers, facts, and evidence. And numbers do not lie. If their investigation uncovers further irregularities, undeclared income, suspicious transfers, hidden property interests, the scandal could expand from embarrassing to criminal. And when criminality enters the equation, resignation is not enough. Trials, charges and courtrooms become the stage, and Labour risks not just political collapse but legal disgrace. The whispers in Westminster are already dark. If Rayner falls in court, who else falls with her? For Starmer, this moment will define his legacy. He can no longer hide behind cautious, lawyerly phrases or scripted platitudes. He must choose, stand firm and cut her loose, proving he values integrity over loyalty, or cling to her and watch his entire project unravel. The decision cannot be delayed much longer. Britain is watching, the media is circling, the Conservatives are sharpening their knives and voters are already shifting their gaze. If Starmer missteps now, it could cost Labour the very election they have spent years preparing for. And so the question lingers like a storm on the horizon. Will Labour emerge from this stronger, purged of hypocrisy and ready to lead? Or will this scandal be the spark that burns the entire project to ash? The clock is ticking, the investigation is deepening, and the truth, however dark, however damning, will come out, because in British politics the cover-up always destroys more than the crime.